Welcome to the 3A's podcast, Ancestral Health, Austrian Economics, and Awareness Mindfulness, the 3A's. And we're back with the 3A's podcast. That's Ancestral Austrian Awareness, Episode 4. Today's guest is Dana Faulkner of LiveWildHealthCoaching.com. Before we get started, I'd like to direct you to the3A's.com. Please sign up for our newsletter. Also, please check us out on our YouTube and subscribe with all the great content. There's a video of every podcast, so if you prefer that format, listening to your car, if you don't have it downloaded to your iTunes, subscribe to us in iTunes, and check us out on Twitter talking about the overlays and the Venn diagram where Austrian economics, ancestral health, and awareness mindfulness meet. Without further ado, here is our interview with Dana Faulkner. Okay, welcome to the 3A's podcast. That's Ancestral Austrian Awareness. And our guest today is Dana Faulkner, and she is behind Live Wild Health Coaching. Welcome to the podcast, Dana. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I caught Dana's website, and I'll give props to Jimmy Moore's Living La Vida Low Carb blog as an up-and-coming blog, someone that we should know about, and after taking a look at her business model and reading through her work over the last few weeks, really happy that she's on the show today. Dana, tell us a little bit about Live Wild Health Coaching.
Okay. Well, I basically am a holistic health coach. I got certified this year, so it's a new business, and mainly what I do is I focus on women's weight loss. So, there's a lot of people coming from, a place of sort of desperation and confusion about diet and lifestyle change, and you hear all kinds of different theories out there, and it can drive you crazy. I don't know if you've ever had to lose weight and you're like, what do I do? So basically I talk to women, and we kind of look at their life, and I take it from a holistic perspective. And we look at everything and see how best to, create, a place for healthy weight loss. So that's mainly what I do. I really believe that, lasting weight loss isn't about numbers on the scale, and it's more about, changing the life that kind of created the excess weight. So that's mainly what I'm doing. It's, I'm brand new at this. I just, like I said, got certified this year. So, I'm excited. This is a passion of mine. I went through it myself, and so I had to discover, how to best fix me first. And that's kind of what the passion I drew off of to create Live Wild.
Yes, and I've had a similar experience too. When I discovered what was my hang-ups in terms of the behaviors that I had with emotional eating, whether it was the content and the caloric emptiness and nutritional emptiness of the calories that I was eating. Everything really started to snap as soon as I was able to make some behavioral modifications and some understandings like that. But before that, it was painful. I put myself through a lot of stress, either starving myself or rewarding myself with food after really grueling exercise sessions, and it just was never able to fully get it off and was just gaining pounds, as most Americans do, X number of pounds every 3 or 4 years. So with the clientele that you work with, it is frustrating, and I've been there, and it sounds like you have too, where there just is no answer, and it must be satisfying to show people and guide them to understanding how there is an answer.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, it is, I think once you, find that path, and it starts with like one small change after the next. I don't know if you noticed that for yourself. Like you made one little difference, on your plate, and it could lead to a difference in, just how much you exercise. And, as you start feeling better, I think you start doing more things to promote that, healthy feeling and having more energy, and maybe fixing a little bit of like sleep issues or managing stress, and they're all related. And, once you start the ball rolling, you can really, it's amazing the changes that you can see occur in people, and having, you saying that you've gone through that as well, and it's really, it's almost hard to put into words, the transformation that occurs with people. I always describe it as finding freedom, and I think that's the best way to put it, from old thinking or, bad habits that maybe you didn't even know were negative at the time. Like you figured, oh, this is this is what I do. But there's such a larger world out of, who you think you are when you're stuck in a rut. Does that make any sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I've never really quite heard it phrased as finding freedom. I think I've heard it described skirting around that word, but not as directly as what you just said. And I immediately thought of the analogy of the baby elephant who, when as an infant, is put in chains and is tied down with a wooden stake and can't break free from that. And as they grow older, once they become an adult elephant, they could easily rip that stake out of the ground and leave, but because they were conditioned to be bound down by that stake when they were, a little elephant, they never understand how what freedom is. And I guess when I discovered that removing these very, harmful substances from my diet, and I know they're harmful because when I introduce them back, I just feel horrible. There's a sense of freedom that I never had experienced it. And once you feel that, and once you understand how easy it is, it's, that when you go back that you are doing what's the opposite of freedom. You're captive.
Right.
You're totally
Oh, yeah.
captive. So explain to me your journey in finding freedom.
Well, I was, basically as, in my 20s, like pretty active person, physically. I like physical activity, and, as, I got a desk job, and, I ended up being more sedentary, and I would say I spent most of my 30s overweight, like very overweight. I would call myself obese. I think I have a picture on my website. You can see that. And I would run on a treadmill, and, I would have like healthy food, and I'm using little quotes in the air, like, I'd eat, like healthy cereals, and I tried being, eating only vegetables for a while, and I tried everything, basically is what I'm trying to say. I tried South Beach diet, and nothing seemed to last. Like I might lose like 10 pounds, and, but I still felt awful, and I started getting digestion issues, like acid reflux and headaches, and I had no energy either. And I want to say, I found, I don't know what I was doing. I was online, and I found Gary Taubes somehow, that book, Good Calories, Bad Calories. Have you read that book?
Yes.
What is it? So I pick it up, and it's a tome of a book. It's really detailed, and, not the easiest read, but at the time I'd never really, understood, the role of carbohydrates, I guess, very well, at least in my life. And I was eating a lot of them and not working out as much as, maybe the level of carbohydrates I was eating dictated I should. And anyway, it kind of blew my mind. And, from there, I found the Primal Blueprint by Mark Sisson. So that was my introduction into paleo, or ancestral eating. And, I immediately, I was like, well, let me try this. I've got nothing to lose. I stopped eating grains, and within a week of stopping grains, I was off my acid reflux medication. I mean, I know that sounds crazy. I was on it for like 4 years. And all of a sudden, done. And the weight started coming off. I was walking. I wasn't actually working out, but walking, and then, omitting grains and legumes. I dropped over 50 pounds. Well, 30 pounds initially. And then I ramped up exercise. And that, took care of a lot more. I still have more to lose. I'm not perfect by any means. So I'm still working on it. But I never felt better in my life, and I'm 41 right now. So it's kind of, it just changed everything for me. Like as soon as I felt better, I did more. I changed a lot of things in my life, and I ended up discovering that maybe this is my passion. I didn't know what I was doing before. I just had a job, and this became, Live Wild. It just, the words came to me, it resonated. I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and I enrolled, and I completed that course recently and got certified. And everything, in stages. Like I feel that freedom, that I mentioned earlier, and I feel like I can really, I'm not afraid to try anything now. Whereas before I was like in this little cave of uncertainty, and I had no self-confidence, and I don't know, it's really just an amazing thing. Like just one little diet change just spurred, my life to change, and that's kind of what I'm putting out there for my clients.
Well, that is an inspiration, especially when you take a book like Good Calories, Bad Calories, which I have read as well, and I can't remember in which chronological order. It was not the first book I read, so kudos to you for swallowing, or eating the whale one bite at a time right off the get-go, because that's not an easy book to read. But what I found was I think read it twice, and I had it all highlighted with all of these words I didn't know, and I was looking them up. And then finally I just had to look up about 1/3 of the words that I didn't know just to get through the book. It got easier and easier, and I think I picked it up again like 6 months after I read it, and I was surprised after practicing, an ancestral health, paleo diet, just all the reading that I did online and so forth, how much I was able to absorb and then put into context, really with being able to internalize the experience of what Gary Taub's book was trying to say in terms of the history of the research and so forth. And it sounds very inspiring too, because then this led you to take that background and those experiences that you were having, those physical and I would assume mental and probably spiritual too experiences, and then to actually study this in a very academic, heavy way, studying nutrition. So I bet you, when you look at your body of knowledge before all of this compared to now, it's like you went from not knowing how to change the oil into a car to being able to disassemble the whole thing and put it back together.
Yeah.
How have you taken that journey then? It must be, as you said, much easier to relate to someone that was very much in your position just a few years ago, and you know exactly what they're feeling, that worried look. I know that for me, I had some of the physical ailments that you were talking about as well. I didn't know at the time, but I've seen pictures of me pre-paleo, and even the pictures where I was smiling, there was almost a worried look, and I think that had to do with like probably having some high inflammation like all of the time, and it just coming out in my face.
Yeah.
And when I see that look in people, and I'm sure you see it too, I know exactly what they're going through. So could you give me some examples of what you see are some of the entry points when you first initially speak to some clients?
Sure. I will, that look that you're describing, it's definitely like all wrapped up in like fear, pain, and shame. Like there's a lot going on, when somebody, is unhealthy, or overweight and, feels desperate, you'll try, you just need some help. And, I think basically, when I meet someone for the first time or speak to them over the phone, I do a lot of speaking over the phone. And, one of the first things, that people generally want is for me to fix them. And I, have to, explain, very carefully that my role is not to fix anybody. That's your job, and I'm a guide, and, I'm not big on telling people what to eat. I have them try different things, and see what works for them. A lot of times, and, I don't know, if this is your experience, but a lot of times if you're overweight and basically you try a paleo or ancestral type of diet, the main thing you're cutting out is a lot of carbs. And so, low carb diet, generally on a sedentary person is going to work very well, because you're not expending a lot of energy. So when you're taking in less, obviously, the weight generally has tendency to come off. But that is also, not something, I would recommend for the long term. The main thing is to, people start feeling better, get them more active, inspire them to work out, whatever they like to do, and as soon as they start moving their bodies, like again, after sitting for many years and you start moving, it can be, daunting and painful and, but after you make something a habit, that's when the real change happens. It's all about making new habits. And I think, switching to an ancestral diet is one of those times. It's a great format for how to eat healthy. Just eat real food. It couldn't get more simpler than that. And then if you just, the more you work out, you can add some carbohydrates back into your diet, basically to fuel your performance. So I'm not just, I'm not about a diet. I'm not a diet person. So I explain that to my potential clients. It's not about putting you on a diet. It's about, you discovering, that person in you that wants the change. And that's where the freedom comes from, and it's all a journey. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's just, you, against you. There's no other, parameters. Like, it's like, well, what are you willing to do today to, make your life better? So I look at it again, it's like a bigger picture. It's not just about the food, not just about the exercise. Like, what turns you on and why are you not doing it? And let's look at that, and see what you can do today to kind of get closer to all your goals, not just, I want to lose 20 pounds. It's not about the scale. It's about how you feel. So.
Well, Dana, you offer a 3-month program. You live in the Boston area, so people could meet with you in person. And I know that would be an excellent service to have that nutritional coach, and with your experiences, definitely a life coach to the extent that you know exactly what folks are feeling with their current activity levels, their background. You could recommend all kinds of different add-ons to the nutritional information, but you also can meet with people over the phone, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm. It's actually a lot easier for most people because they're, not, just about being in the Boston area, anywhere. You find my site and you want to, set up a free consultation. That's what I do first with everyone to see if we're a good fit. I mainly work with people who actually want to make a change. I can't make somebody change. They have to want it. And you usually will know if somebody does because then they call you back after the consultation. So it's pretty easy to figure out. But, yes. So it's a 3-month program, and I will work, like I said, over the phone is almost easier, but if you are local to me, I'm happy to do the program in person.
And learning everything that you did through your nutritional academic programs, going through that intense information, how much more do you appreciate the approach that you're taking when you understand much more deeply the science behind it, more so than you even did when you had those first initial positive reactions of being able to say goodbye to your acid reflux medication and so forth?
Well, I will say when I was taking classes at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, what they do is they throw a bunch of theories at you. And so in a way, if you didn't know what worked for you when you were going into it or what you believed was, working, it's very confusing. Like I said, it's like anyone being out there, like trying to figure out, well, what diet works for me, or what's the right way to eat, or what's the healthiest way to eat. And every diet, I think, has science behind it. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just, somebody being able to say, oh, well, this study says this, so I'm going to do this. This must be right. There's always like an opposite study that somebody's done, so it makes it even more confusing. So I would say like it's so individual. Like you have to, if you try this and it works for you, you've figured something out. And, so I don't know that going to school actually changed what I thought initially, like with an ancestral diet, but it certainly opened my mind to a more spiritual side of life. Like I wasn't really a spiritual person, but I really learned to embrace, that is, which is bigger than me, and just, awareness of self more than anything. It was pretty interesting. I would say that. I don't know that I answered your question though.
Oh, absolutely. I think that if you went in there knowing what works for you, then that was probably a good way to keep on an intelligent path, because there is so many counter studies that, not saying that they're not backed on solid research, but they can tell you a lot of different things depending on how you're interpreting them, and unfortunately, it depends also on the agenda that you're trying to promote, and sometimes those agendas don't have your best interest in them. And I guess that's almost a subject for another conversation.
Right.
So what I have found, we had spoken a little bit off air, is I grew up in California, and the time that you spend outside, certain seasonal fruits, well, they were just available all year round, pretty much at the same price. Pretty much get anything at the grocery store now, no matter where you're at here in the States. But the weather does affect your activity when you're living in a place like Massachusetts, let alone somewhere like Maine or our brothers and sisters north of the Canadian border. How have you adapted your lifestyle, especially now that you're living this ancestral health lifestyle, as the seasons change?
Well, it is difficult in winter. Obviously you're not gonna, or at least I'm not, going to want to spend that much time outside. So mainly I kind of, tinker with the diet a little bit to fit my activity level. So, for instance, in winter I might not eat as much because I'm not going to be expending as much energy. However, I joined CrossFit. So I have a box that I go to, so now I can, get my workout going indoors, and be motivated because there's other people there. So that's always important, to keep yourself motivated. Before I did that, I would, mainly, I would still eat pretty much the same. Maybe, I would, make more hearty meals, I guess, in the sense of like, what's good for winter, or keeping me warm, or like stews and lots of bone broth. I make a lot of homemade bone broth. And, and exercise in my home. I wouldn't be doing as much walking or something like that, but I'd be doing some weightlifting. And just mainly, not getting sucked into sitting too much. I try to I'm getting one of those standing desks so I don't sit as much. But it is difficult because, there's not as much sunlight. People have a tendency, to get a little down in the winter. And I think the main focus, to remember is, this is temporary, and winter can be beautiful also, I take lots of pictures.
Oh, absolutely. And it's that much more difficult when you're not dialed in correctly with how you're eating. I find that I can, quote unquote, suffer through the winter being much happier, maybe not as happy in the summertime because I'm not going to be able to swim for a couple more months.
Right.
But, well, which leads me to, going from bone broths to toothpaste. One of the things that I was very much interested, because I've gone through a few different kinds of quote unquote paleo toothpaste, whatever that might be, other than brushing your teeth with a stick. Tell me a little bit about your hobby of making your own toothpaste.
Well, actually, the toothpaste thing came from, an idea that I had. I think it was last winter. So this is what I do in the winter. I wanted to try to make once a month like a natural household product or beauty product, without all the chemicals and, something a little, more, I guess, ancestral, or it doesn't even really, have to do with paleo. It's more about not wanting to put a bunch of chemicals on me all the time. So many environmental toxins, and, I've always had sensitive skin, and, so the first thing I did was I had made a moisturizer, and most of the recipes I found, by the way, I have to give props to the website, wellnessmama.com. I don't know if you've been there, but that website has like pretty much any recipe for a natural product you can think of. So I made a pledge to try to make one product a month, that would be more natural and safe for, my environment at home. And the toothpaste came up because I had, I was like, oh, okay, well, there's a lot of junk in toothpaste, and I was buying the over-the-counter more natural ones. They're so expensive. I'm sure you've noticed. And, and still some of those have, some ingredients that you probably don't need in toothpaste. So I tried a couple different ones, and there was always some kind of issue I didn't like about it. And the last one I posted recently that you saw was from Wellness Mama, and that one seemed to work the best. Like it's coconut oil in it, so it's cold in here, it gets hard, so you have to kind of, the downfall is you have to heat it up in hot water or like put a jar or the tube into hot water just to soften it. So it's still not perfect. I was actually going to write a follow-up on my blog about it. But, my teeth feel better. I have the peace of mind of knowing that there, are no chemicals in it, much like all those products that I've tried. And like I have a household cleaner made with vinegar and lemons, and, that to me is something I'm going to keep going with, like keep trying to make things myself, be more self-sufficient, not putting money into chemical corporations just to, have softer skin or cleaner teeth, So it's just kind of, I think organic for me to go in that direction, as well as not just my diet or my exercise regimen, to actually be able to make something with my own hands to make my, skin healthier, my house cleaner, without all the side effects.
Well, I'm inspired. I'm definitely going to follow some of the tips and lessons learned that you posted on your website about the toothpaste. And, you mentioned Primal Mama, right? Or
Wellness Mama.
Oh, excuse me, Wellness Mama. There's a few mamas out there that have websites.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is a Primal Mama, and I think I've been on that site. Practical Paleo, Everyday Paleo. A few years ago, 2008, there were a lot of websites out there that had solid information that was good for everybody, but had some aspect that was mainly for females that were adopting or seeking to adopt a whole foods, ancestral paleo lifestyle. And now there are just so many out there. I think one of the initial complaints about just the word paleo is it had that cave woman connotation of being pulled around by the ponytail. And I can say that folks like you and all the other great websites that I mentioned and that you follow that are run by strong, healthy, incredibly intelligent female entrepreneurs, they're not going to be pulled around by anybody or anything. And it is just an incredible way that folks like you are just being role models for young girls, young boys at the same time. Incredible information. Before we wrap up, is there anything that we didn't cover, Dana, that you would like to pass on?
What I would like to kind of leave you with is that I think everybody has the power, in fact, to heal themselves, and so we don't need to, be helpless. To me, we are the ones in control of our lives, and I think when, we don't know what to do, we get stuck. And as soon as we just make one small change, just one, it becomes easier to make another one, and you don't get so wrapped up in fear. And I think, I think that's what I found when I discovered, a more paleo life. To someone else it could be something else. It doesn't have to be paleo. I'm not, super paleo identified. I am, but I mean, I follow it. But that's not my identity or Live Wild's identity. But certainly about, really, just eating real foods, getting out there and moving and finding ways to, enjoy yourself. I think we can all, do a little more of that.
That's a great message. And if you're out there and you're trying to get unstuck, you feel like you're captive, you're looking at shadows from the fire on your cave wall, and you don't know what freedom is, Dana taught me in this interview that, yeah, I did find freedom, and I didn't know really what it meant. It's a great way to distill it down to its core. So if you want to have some good coaching, go to livewildhealthcoaching.com. I'll put all of those links in the show notes. Give her a call. She's someone that understands your perspective. She can walk you down that path and help you find that freedom that you need. Dana, thank you so much. It was really great talking with you today. I wish you all the best, and I'll drop you a line when I make that toothpaste. If I have some green stained teeth, I'll know that I wasn't following the directions that well.
Sounds fantastic. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, Dana, from livewildhealthcoaching.com. You can find her information in the show notes. You will be able to find this podcast also in YouTube. Please subscribe to us on iTunes, subscribe to our YouTube page, and check us out on Twitter. See you next time on the Ancestral Austrian Awareness Podcast.